good morning to all of you. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Patnaik for giving me this opportunity to deliver this keynote address in front of this august gathering. We all know that technology affects every aspect of human life. And the best thing about technology is that it continues to evolve. When man landed on moon first, the computer that was used, it had only 64 kilobytes of memory. Today it is difficult to imagine that the average computing power that is sitting on our desks is more than the entire computing power used by the NASA to land first man on the moon. It's difficult to imagine even that. It affects every aspect and it is changing the learning process also. The conventional method of teaching is that teacher goes to the classroom, he delivers the lecture, maybe he asks the students some questions and a little bit of interactivity is there. But the problem is when I go as a teacher to the classroom, there are 75 students and some of the students, they are very bright, some of the students are just average and some of the students are below average. So if I am teaching fast, then maybe I am doing justice to the bright students, but at the same time the students who are below average, maybe they are not able to follow what I am teaching. So basically I think the conventional method of teaching is more teacher oriented rather than learner oriented, because all the controls are in the hands of the teacher. I decide what I am going to teach, how I am going to teach and what pace I am going to keep. If I am slow, then maybe the slow learners are happy, but the students who are bright, I am not doing justice to them. And it is the technology which has enabled us to make the learning process learner oriented rather than teacher oriented. And when we talk about the history, it was in 1990s that video tape based training came into existence. So when we had recorded the lectures on video tapes, then maybe we could cut down on cost, in the sense that most of the institutes, especially when we talk about technical education, we face shortage of faculty and we have to invite experts from outside. And every time the experts are invited from outside, then maybe because of the locational distance, the expenditure involved is quite high. But if we have recorded their lectures on videotapes, then we definitely cut down on costs. I remember when I was teaching microprocessors, then in TTTI only, we have developed a series of videotapes on microprocessors. And in that series, we have lectures delivered from faculty such as from IIT Madras, then NITTTR Kolkata. So experts from different locations have come to TTTI, they have delivered lectures and we have recorded those lectures on videotapes. And then we show those videotapes to the students, then students get a different type of exposure. Although say I am teaching the subject, but then they get the opportunity to have access to a videotape which has been prepared by a professor from IIT Madras. So the exposure is more, expenses are also less, but there are problems with videotapes also. Once a videotape has been recorded, it cannot be upgraded easily. If the, like I said, technology evolves. So when technology evolves, the curriculums have to be changed. There are new topics. So if we want to change the contents of the videotapes, that is not possible. We have to do new recording. And again, when we are using videotapes for learning, pace is still a problem. When I was running a videotape in the class, the student has to keep pace at which the lecture is being delivered through the videotape. We still cannot say that it is totally, learner oriented. It is not that the learner is learning at his own pace. The learner is learning at the pace at which the expert who has delivered the lecture and whose lecture has been recorded in the videotape at his pace. So then we had the multimedia era, and in came the concept of computer-based training. So multimedia enabled us to record audio, video, and we could add even animations. We could make the lectures interactive by adding questions to the lectures which were recorded on CDs, and the learner could just insert that CD in his computer and then he could learn at his own pace. So that problem was overcome because of the multimedia technology. Learning could be done at the pace learner wanted to learn. That became possible. But even when we have computer-based training, upgradability was still an issue, because once the CD is prepared, we cannot upgrade it easily. It has to be redone. We have to have new CDs for new topics, or any improvement we want, we have to re-record on the CD. And then learner is learning using material which is there on the CDs, but how to evaluate the performance of the learner? When the teacher is going to the classroom, he is also evaluating the performance of the learner. When the teacher is asking questions, depending upon the response of the students, evaluation is being done. Then maybe some tests are being conducted, some quizzes are being done for the evaluation. So computer-based training, although we can say that it was learner oriented, still these issues were there: upgradability and how to evaluate the performance of the learner. So then as the technology evolved, we had this learning management systems. So learning management system is basically a software platform which allows for front-end registration, and we have course cataloging. So students, they can register for a particular course, and this is at the front end that the students can select the course for which they want to register, and at the back end the skills are we have the content through which the skills are being delivered, and then reporting is also possible: how many students attended the class, and even the evaluation of the students can be done. Maybe there are some online quizzes and students take part in those quizzes, and how they have performed, that can also be reported. It is possible to do all that using learning management system with the help of online courses. So it was possible to track the student progress, and even real-time discussions were possible. So all this became possible because of internet, because the learner was now connected, and maybe at a fixed time slot, even the teacher could be there on the web, and the students could interact with the teacher to clear their doubts. So maybe he has gone through some offline material, and then he can fix up some time with the teacher and have some discussions also. So all this became possible because of the learning management system. So this process of learning using information technology, we call it e-learning. So when we talk about education and training, basically education is your formal education, when you are going to a college or school. So these are the formal modes of education. Then when we talk about training, the corporate is conducting training for their employees. Even in universities, we conduct training programs for the faculty to keep them abreast of the changes in the technology. And this education and training leads to learning. On the other side, we have lot of information, and if we use technology, that can information and technology together can bring about knowledge management. So we can have lot of knowledge which is there on the servers, and that knowledge has to be managed using the technology. And when we are learning through this knowledge systems, knowledge-based systems, then we say that the learning process that evolves is e-learning. So today when we talk about e-learning, then we have e-classrooms. So when we talk about e-classrooms, that means basically we have web-based learning environment. And because of this web-based learning environment, we can even have live instructors. So we have live instructor-led training. So a real-time mentoring is possible, and the learner services are further improved. Because when we were doing computer-based training, then the learner was depending upon CD. It was pre-recorded. But now the learner can even learn at his own pace and then maybe clear his doubts from the teacher. So this e-classroom basically provides a highly effective multi-dimensional environment, and which changes the learning environment, and basically it is an improvement upon computer-based training. And this concept of e-classrooms, it further leads to virtual university environment. So in India, we have this University of Madras, which has opened a virtual university in partnership with the University of Mumbai and University of Calcutta. So this virtual university system, it has led to the commencement of 10 joint degree, postgraduate and PhD programs. So you look at the advantage of virtual university system. Countries without university education can access universities in other countries via the web, and this is a solution which is much cheaper than building university infrastructure. Then we have underdeveloped countries. So e-learning can raise the level of education, literacy and economic development. And especially for the countries where technical education is expensive, opportunities are limited and economic disparities exist, this is a very useful solution. Now the technology has further evolved, and now we have grid environment. Professor Patnaik was already talking about this. So grid, this is how the grid works. We have computers which are loosely coupled across the globe. These computers, they are at geographically different locations, and it is possible to share resources from across scattered locations because of the grid. So when we talk about grid computing, it is basically distributed computing, and we have we can say super and virtual computer. This super and virtual computer, it is composed of a cluster of networked computers. So these are loosely coupled computers, and they can perform very large tasks. This concept of this technology, grid computing technology, was basically evolved for solving intensive scientific, mathematical and academic problems. And although it can contribute to the learning process also, but the objective was when it was evolved, the objective was this. So across the globe, the database servers, laptops, clusters, supercomputers, everything is connected and the resources can be shared. So I will not go into the details of what grid computing is, but if you have heard of cluster computing, then cluster computing is limited to a particular area. Say we have a cluster in TTTI or in Punjab University, but when we talk about grid, then grid is a cluster of computers which are heterogeneous, the platforms are heterogeneous, and the locations are geographically different. And when we talk about grid computing, then we require grid middleware also. In between the operating system and the hardware, we need grid middleware and grid software libraries. So this paradigm, which we call grid computing, it helps to create virtual classrooms by interconnecting lecturers to geographically scattered students. So now we are talking about an environment, where a lecture is maybe being conducted in MIT, USA or Harvard. Some professor at Harvard is delivering a lecture, and a student of Punjab University or Punjab Engineering College can also maybe join in that lecture and attend that lecture. So that kind of situation is also possible. So, but when we talk about using grid computing to help us in virtual learning, then there are certain requirements. In addition to attending lectures, we can also interconnect the libraries. We can digitalize and make books available through high storage infrastructure. We can integrate library search engines and digital content, and we can make educational material also, which can be available worldwide through this high storage infrastructure. Coming to the technological needs, if we want to use this paradigm for learning, then what do we need? First thing is that we need high throughput duplex communication, because when we are talking about attending a lecture through web, which is being delivered at US, we need some high communication link, and the link has to be duplex. Only then the learner can pose questions. Then high storage capacity is also required, because we are not only talking about online learning, the learning can be offline also. The lectures can be stored on some servers, and the students can learn through those material at their own pace. And finally, the system integration. The kind of system we are using at Punjab University, it would be different from the kind of system being used in TTTI or in Harvard or in MIT. So how to integrate all those systems? That is also an issue. So if we look at the situation where we have to use grid computing for learning, then this is the scenario. We have a block where the professor is delivering the lecture. So the professor is delivering the lecture in the broadcasting room, and through the grid is connected to individual sites. So individual sites are basically for the individual students. Then maybe it is also connected to a institute or a college or a university where there is a proper classroom and the students are there, and then the grid is also connected to the grid portal. So this kind of connectivity is required. So when we say classroom, then basically classroom is like any other classroom, but it should be when we say that the classroom should be connected to the grid, that means the connectivity should be there. And in addition to having the connectivity in the classroom through which the classroom is connected to the grid, the other accessories are also required, like we are using here. We have a computer which will be connected to the grid, and then we have the projector, then we have the mic. If the student wants to ask some questions, then that facility should also be there, and then speakers. So basically we need electronic gadgets in the classrooms, only then it is possible to use that environment. Then individual site basically means that individual students are also connected to the grid, and they can join the conference through their own personal computers. So connectivity and a computer is required, and you can join the conference across the grid. So these individual sites, they can be widely scattered, and they can be across any locations, but they must those scattered locations must provide facilities for participating in the lecture. Then broadcasting room is the place where the professor is delivering the lecture. So the technical resources are same as are required in the classroom, but then video camera and maybe some system to for denoising, those things will be required, and maybe an operator which will assist the professor with the management of the equipment. Then another thing was grid portal. So grid portal is basically which allows the users to perform different activities, such as submitting the professors, they can submit lectures. So we have offline lecture materials, then students who have to subscribe to those lectures, and it should be possible to upload and download the offline content. Access grid is a grid which allows learning using grid platform. So Access grid is basically an ensemble of resources which includes multimedia large format displays, presentations and interactive environment, and it is interfaced to the grid middleware. So we can go to accessgrid.com and we can use this grid for learning. So this grid basically, it has resources which support group to group interaction across the grid. So when we are talking about learning through grid computing, we need these kind of platforms which will allow us to interact across the grid. So grid computing, from grid computing now the technology has evolved to cloud computing. Now in the cloud computing, when we talk about grid computing, we are saying that we have a system or we have a server which is connected to the grid, and we are sharing the resources across the globe. But when we come to cloud computing, then the user simply needs a thin client. The user does not need any resources at all. You just need a thin client and you are connected to the cloud. Once you are connected to the cloud, you can use the resources that are available on the cloud. So in fact, all of you must have already, all of you have already used this cloud computing environment, because when we are using mail servers, then your mails are not on your computer. Whether you are using Hotmail or Yahoo, so your mails are stored on the Yahoo server or Hotmail server, and you are just accessing your mails from that server. So when you are accessing your mail, you are using one form of cloud computing. So you are not using any resources from your computer. You just need a computer and you need a connection to the internet, and you can access your mails. So cloud computing reduces the requirement of resources on the local system. So if we want to be a part of cloud computing, we only need a thin client and then grid computing. Grid computing facilitates cloud computing, and then comes the concepts of utility computing. Utility computing is basically when you are using resources on the cloud, then you should be paying for it also. It is like, we are using electricity and we pay the bill. So if we want to use instructional material which is there on the cloud, then there should be some methodology by which we should be paying for using that material. So these are the three things which make possible cloud computing. So this is how cloud computing works. We have a thin client, just a computer and a web browser, so that you can be on the cloud, and then all the databases, networks, application servers, control node, everything is on the cloud, and you are on the cloud. So you can use the resources that are there on the cloud. So this is another example of a cloud where you can see Microsoft, Yahoo, Amazon, Google, everybody is interconnected. So Google has this introduced Chrome OS, which has no built-in applications. Like normally we have built-in applications like calendar, then notepad and things like that on the local computer. But Chrome OS has no built-in applications. It just has a browser which allows you to connect to the cloud, and you can use all the resources on the cloud. The Microsoft is even taking Office 2010 in the cloud. So that is how the organizations are going to use these technologies by introducing their latest products which will be there on the cloud, and users simply need to be connected to the cloud to use those resources. And then IBM Cloud Academy is another forum. This is a global forum for educators, researchers and information technology personnel from the education industry, and it will enable them to pursue cloud computing initiatives for developing skills and share best practices for reducing operating costs while improving quality and access to education. So in fact, this is the objective of most of the companies today. Even Amazon is talking about being on the cloud, and I think in the future we can think of a global learning environment where the learner simply requires a thin client through which he can be connected to the cloud, and all the information will be available on the cloud and it can be accessed from there. But the only thing is that we need to have systems which can provide high-speed connectivity. Only then it is possible to have this kind of arrangement. So that's all I want to say on this. Thank you.